Welcome to Friday Forum. I'm Colin Jones. Thank you for joining us at EcoTrust in Northwest Portland, where thousands of people are joining us online, on the radio, and on TV. Live viewers are watching on KGW's website, Facebook feed, and news app. Our radio audience is listening via X-Ray FM stations, 107.1 FM and 91.1 FM, and TV viewers will watch today's program on community media television. We're incredibly grateful for the support of our media partners in bringing City Club's programming to our community. In addition to City Club's valued media partners, our sponsors, volunteers, and staff enable us to put on Oregon's best civic program. A special thank you goes out to today's sponsors, Wells Fargo, Travel Portland, and Metropolitan Land Group. We'd also like to thank EcoTrust for working with us to bring this special event to this space, and Yahala for providing a wonderful lunch. Please join me in showing our appreciation to everyone who has made this event possible. Our special guest today is Metro Council President Lynn Peterson. Lynn has been recognized as a problem solver and a national expert in land use and transportation over the last 30 years. She works to find innovative ways to build safe, healthy, and equitable communities. She is the president of Greater Portland's Metro Council and took office in January of 2019. Please help me in welcoming Metro President Lynn Peterson.
Good afternoon, everyone. There you go. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to talk about moving this region forward. Portland City Club has been and continues to be a welcome place for civil discourse for keeping the Rose City focused on problem solving. Before we begin, I would like to recognize my mother, Lois, down here in front. She is an inspiration, and I would not be here today without her guidance and support, so thank you. And it is an honor to have with us a whole bunch of elected officials, and I would ask you to rise from across the region, and former elected officials, rise and be acknowledged for all of your great public service. You know, Metro isn't anything without the partnerships, and the partnerships in this room are quite amazing when I look around. I want to recognize the Oregon Zoo Foundation and zoo staff that are here today. Your work in conservation of Northwest endangered species is making a difference for generations of Northwesterners, the Zoo Foundation folks over here. We also have the Merck commissioners here today. Thank you for the success that Metro visitor venues have had in bringing the world to Oregon. Where are you guys? You're over, raise your hands. Over here. I also want to recognize the Metro staff and volunteers who are serving the people of this region every day. At the Oregon Zoo, the Convention Center, the Expo Center, at Portland 5 Center for the Arts, and Metro transfer stations, parks, natural areas, and cemeteries. There is so much work that is done, and we are so proud of them. Can we just give them a hand? And finally, I just want to say thank you to my Metro colleagues who are here today. We have Councilor Chase, Councilor Craddock, Councilor Dirksen, and Councilor Stacy, I think, was going to be here. It's hard to tell. I took off my glasses. You know, hope. Metro has always been a government about hope, about aspirations for the region we want and the steps it takes to get there. We know what that looks like. Wherever you live, wherever you come from, you know what you want out of the Portland region. We want clean air and clean water, open spaces and green hills. You want both a plan and an action to address climate change. You want a family wage job, communities with great schools, parks, and small businesses. And you want to feel safe in your home, in your community, on your commute, and when you kiss your kids goodbye to go to school. You want justice and equity. so that everyone can benefit from the things that make this region great. Today, I want to talk about the steps Metro is taking to make all of these things a reality, so that we can all live in the reality we aspire to and can achieve. That's an important note. This isn't a pipe dream. This is a vision our region is already working to accomplish. Think about last year's Parks and Nature Bond. 67% of voters of this region signed off on the measure, by far the largest and most ambitious parks program in our region's history. Yeah. It was a testament to how very connected the people of this region feel to the outdoors, to open spaces, to all things about Oregon that are special. We talk about making nature an inviting place for everyone, but the reality is that not everyone feels welcome. We need to do more than just open the doors to the natural areas that surround our region. This year, Metro is working in partnership with local communities to improve water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, and connect people with nature, particularly communities of color. We're specifically looking at programs that build relationships for outdoor education by and for people of color. We're looking to increase the number of visitors, staff, and programs and parks representing diverse groups. And we're looking to increase the capacity within organizations that serve people of color to lead programs like nature education. One of the groups that received a grant last year is the Student Crew Leadership Program, a partnership between Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center and Friends of Trees. The program provides low-income youth and young people of color with opportunities for habitat restoration and mentorship that could help them get careers related to natural resources. Liz Cole, a student of the program at Rosemary Anderson High School, became a crew leader at Friends of Trees and told us about how the program helped connect her to different people and how excited she was for her possible job opportunities. At our beloved Oxbow Regional Park in the Sandy River, children of varying abilities are now able to join 2 nature play areas that opened last May. One features climbing structures and water and sand play stations. The other is a kids' adventure camp with a nature lab and small camp kitchen. If you're a parent, you know just how popular these nature play areas are. Wherever you live in this region, rest assured you have the opportunity to work with us on restoring, preserving, or building parks. In fact, that is how Council Deputy President Gonzalez first encountered and fell in love with Metro. While he is currently not in town, I wanted to personally thank him and publicly thank him for stepping up and stepping in to work with this region. We are all better off because of his courage. Equity is ingrained in our work to protect the environment, and not just through our parks program. Metro is in the midst of a years-long effort to overcome racist policies in the region and break down those barriers. It touches everything we do. Research has shown that achieving racial equity is one of the benchmarks of economic success for any city. Racial equity is not only the right thing to do for justice, it's the right thing to do for prosperity. Our staff is working diligently to create equitable access to our services and to improve our decision-making. We believe that our decisions are best informed when everyone has a voice at the table, not just the powerful or those with time. One of the ways we're doing that is through our Construction Careers Pathways program. Through the partnerships with the City of Portland, Multnomah County, Prosper Portland, and many others on construction projects, we are helping increase access to family-sustaining careers in the construction industry for women and people of color, with hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in training, support, and job site interventions. We will make sure that women and people of color who enter the trades find it to be a welcoming profession that they can stay and grow in. Another project that is improving equity in our region was our 2030 Regional Waste Plan, adopted last year. Now, you may not think of disposal of recycling and garbage as needing an equity focus, but the plan contains goals and actions informed by the community. We listened and learned about what is most important to community members. Now we are taking action. Metro is awarding grants to several businesses and nonprofit organizations that are looking at innovative ways to support our garbage and recycling system. We will continue to develop and sustain public-private partnerships to keep our environment clean, our communities safe, and create equitable access to our services. One of the things Metro staff saw during the development of the regional waste plan was the change in how we manage recycling. To address the challenges of the changes in the recycling market, we are hitting this head on. One of the companies we're working with is Denton Plastics, a Northeast Portland company that employs peoples from dozens of countries in their recycling plant. Thanks to a grant from Metro, Denton Plastics will install new equipment that will help turn thousands of tons of used plastic containers and plant pots into the raw materials to be made into new products. Making new products from recycled plastics has large environmental benefits, particularly in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions that would otherwise result from using petroleum. And we supported the plastic bag ban at the state level. And today, I urge you to support us as we ask legislators to step up again and create a very strong program that will keep used mattresses from being sent to the landfill and dramatically increase the number that get recycled. So please call your legislators. If we are going to continue prioritizing clean air and water, climate, and our quality of life, we have to address traffic and transportation. That's why I'm proud of the work we are proposing this year to get this region moving again. More than 110,000 times every day, people board a MAX train to get where they are going, but we can do better. Nearly 175,000 times every day, people board a TriMet or Smart bus to get where they're going, but we can do better. Thousands more in our region bike, walk, or take other forms of transportation, and yes, we can do much better. The real question is how many recitals, ball games, or swim meets have we missed? How many business meetings that needed to be face-to-face were by Skype or by the dreaded conference call in your car? And how many just-in-time deliveries were just a little late? How many times were we not able to meet a deadline because our employees were unable to get to work? Time may be money to businesses, but time stolen away from our families is less social interaction and less happiness. Our fast-growing region is estimated to add another 1 million people in the years to come. That's a lot more people to move and a lot more traffic unless we act now. Doing nothing is a choice, but it's a really bad choice. We have to address immediate issues like safety and congestion and long-term needs of transit improvements and curbing carbon pollution. For the last year, a diverse 3-county task force made up of members of the business community, electeds, and thought leaders throughout the region has looked at projects and priorities throughout the region, and I could not be more proud of their work and their commitment to all of our communities. One of our co-chairs is here today, and I just want to say thank you to Washington County Commissioner Pam Treese. Will you just... Their recommendations made last month start us on the path towards real progress in improving safety and mobility for all, addressing critical improvements throughout the region, and preparing our transit and transportation systems for a cleaner, more sustainable future. The investments we are proposing will help bus riders spend more time with their families, help workers find new ways to get to their jobs, help families get the kids to school, and make it safer for everyone who uses our roads, no matter how you're getting around. It will mark a major step forward in addressing the 130-plus traffic fatalities that occur in the 3-county area every year. The package Metro will propose will accomplish a great deal, from critical safety improvements to helping buses and commuters move efficiently on our surface streets. It will set the region on a course for reducing carbon emissions. Fewer tailpipes idling in traffic, and fewer people reliant on those tailpipes for getting to work, school, and activities. The people of this region are smart enough to know that to address the critical traffic issues we face, The climate crisis we must confront and the growth pressures that will only intensify requires that all of us do everything we can with everyone we can. It starts with the corridors that people know, where they will see a tangible impact in how they get around, starting with 82nd Avenue, Tualatin Valley Highway, McLaughlin Boulevard. This doesn't mean we pat ourselves on the back and call it a day. We have to use the strength of our convictions and the momentum as a region to leverage more from our state partners, demand action from a federal government retreating from its responsibilities, and continue leading by example in our planning and implementation of progressive transit and mobility policies. Whether you live in downtown Portland, Gresham, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Lake Oswego, or Milwaukee, or anywhere in between, you will benefit from this package. By looking at our system through a lens of equity, safety, and mobility, we can make smart investments, not a false promise to end all congestion or eliminate all emissions, but use best practices and smart planning to get our region moving and help meet critical climate goals. In the case of the Albina Vision in particular, this will also help meet critical justice goals. We have an obligation as Oregonians to work to address the harmful decisions of the past. That means working with our state partners to ensure that the Rose Quarter project is done right with an eye toward justice and equity. Our transportation proposal includes funding for many of the connections inside the Rose Quarter area that will make it a successful community. But if our state is going to make a lasting impact on quality of life, if we are going to address the historic injustice of the original Interstate 5 construction that ripped apart the community of Oregonians, we have to go the extra mile and fix it. The caps must be built, the pedestrian and bicycle corridors must be included, and Albina must be stitched together by ODOT and the state of Oregon. We have to get shit done, and we have to do it right. The corridor strategy underlying our proposals are all about integrating our progressive values and regional priorities, literally building where the rubber meets the roads. Or in the case of finally building the 12-mile Southwest Corridor Max line, where the train meets the tracks. The Southwest Corridor is about so much more than a light rail line. It's about coming up with a whole new way of thinking about transportation improvements in a corridor. For the last 3 years, we've been working on the Southwest Corridor Equitable Development Strategy, which is a fancy way of saying, help people and businesses stay in the corridor after the train comes through. Because nobody should be forced to leave an area because of a transportation project, and nobody should get an eviction notice because their neighborhood got more livable. Together, we've worked with Home Forward to help more than 3,000 people find access to housing support in the corridor. And we have partnered with Proud Ground to establish a pipeline of permanently affordable home ownership opportunities. This 10-year partnership will last through construction of the light rail line and long beyond. People from all over this country will look to the Southwest Corridor as a model for equitable development and ensuring that nobody gets left behind when we get our transportation system moving again. Standing still simply isn't an option. We are a region of builders, dreamers, and doers. We are ready for action on these priorities, and I am confident in our direction forward. This commitment to bold action is exemplified in our approach to addressing the housing affordability crisis in this region. In 2017, 93 Oregonians died while living on the streets of Multnomah County alone. Let that sink in. Once every 4 days, an Oregonian experiencing homelessness is found dead in the greater Portland area. The crisis is occurring across the country. We used to think that homelessness was a big city problem, a West Coast problem. But growing income inequality and federal disinvestment have spread this crisis nationwide. In Atlanta, Denver, the Twin Cities, Phoenix, Miami, and Tampa, thousands of people are sleeping outside every night. Metro's response has been to do what we can within the area of our expertise. Metro reduced barriers to services and worked to better understand the challenges facing our houseless community to try and keep all communities in our region clean and safe. We recently launched or increased investments to 2 programs to help people experiencing homelessness dispose of their trash, and have collected more than 12,000 pounds of garbage across the region in the last year. We are hiring people who need a job because of homelessness or criminal infraction in their past to clean up illegally dumped garbage. We launched the nation's first regional affordable housing program, leveraging our expertise in building new apartments with regional bond funding. I want to say thanks to Councilor Chase for working on this regional issue. Your commitment to a better outcome for this region is paying off. Thank you. In 2019, thanks to Metro investments, 683 new apartment homes opened in our region. Projects like the Blackburn supportive housing in Portland, built in partnership with Central City Concern, and projects like Cornelius Place in Washington County, helping seniors find stable housing near things they need to access. Within the next 15 months, Metro expects to break ground on another 700 apartments, helping more than 1,000 Oregonians find a stable place to call home. Because we know the first step to ending homelessness is to put a roof over people's heads. These are not the first or last steps that Metro can take on behalf of those in need. As the former chair of Clackamas County and now as Metro Council president, I've had many discussions with stakeholders across the region on these issues. That's why I'm supporting a region-wide program to address homelessness in Greater Portland, one that funds all services that are needed to help get and keep people out of tents and into homes. I can't sit here while people die in tents on the streets, parks, alleyways, and parking lots across the region. With the federal government pulling out from providing help nationwide on low-income housing and services, and the lack of construction during the Great Recession, there was a 22% increase in homelessness from the last point in time count in Multnomah County. It is obvious that the system is broken. We have been at the table with the Here Together Coalition for the last year. I want to thank Katrina Holland, who chairs the Here Together Coalition Advisory Committee, for fiercely advocating for change. Without her partnership and the work of the other 53 members of the advisory group, we would not be making progress in this region. The program we, the Metro Council, can put forward to the voters to consider within the Metro region would include rent assistance while getting people back on their feet. It would also fund the myriad of services required to ensure stability and success. Services like mental health care, addiction treatment, case management, and access to health care. Through partnerships with local governments, nonprofits, and healthcare providers, we can and will identify the unique services needed for each of the individuals experiencing homelessness across the Greater Portland region. And we will give them a helping hand until they are off the streets, have shelter, and have hope for good. I have had enough, and so have you. You want something to disrupt the system and turn the tide on these complex and difficult issues. This is a goal within our reach. Through a marginal tax on the wealthiest residents of our region, a tax to make up for years of the failed federal policies of trickle-down economics, we can overcome this challenge. Our region is desperate for this. In Oregon, for every 5 households eligible for affordable housing, only 1 gets it. Local jurisdictions are scrambling to pick up the slack by the failed policies of presidents like Richard Nixon and Donald Trump, and here we are. We are here today to say no more, that we will not let other parts of the country dictate our future. We will tackle our challenges head on, and we'll have the region we want. For many people, the Portland region we live in today is a very livable and pleasant place, but it is not the perfect place. We can't just stop now in our tracks and say, good enough. Because we have historic injustice to overcome, and because the world keeps changing around us, and because people continue to move here. You have asked for boldness. You have asked for leaders that tell you the truth and strive to hold us all to a higher standard. You want to trust that we can tackle problems that were started by others and succeed. We can't solve all of these challenges overnight, but we will chip away at these challenges through a holistic approach, whether it is parks, clean air, clean water, decreasing the amount of plastic and waste, transportation, or housing. Metro was there to help facilitate and coordinate and hold ourselves accountable to the goals. People of this region have always had a do-it-yourself mentality, and we will do this ourselves, the people of this region, together, and we will succeed. You have stood for those who needed housing. You have stood for clean air and water, and you have stood for the preservation of habitat. So I ask you today, if you can, quietly with your chairs, rise out of your seats today. If you can't rise, please raise your hand. Rise up with us and stand once again for making sure that those who need housing services and those who need a safer, more affordable transportation system will have it. And the removal of barriers for those who faced injustice. Because as you rise, the Metro Council stands with you. We are ready to do this with you. We will get this done, and we will make a lot of shit happen. Thanks.
For our radio audience, this is City Club of Portland's Friday Forum, coming to you from the EcoTrust building in Northwest Portland. I'm Colin Jones, former president of City Club. With us today is Metro Council President Lynn Peterson, discussing the state of the region. We'd like to welcome everyone watching or listening today to ask a question. If you've written a question on an index card, hold it high for City Club staff to collect. You may also submit questions via Twitter using the hashtag Friday Forum. To those who would like to ask a question at the mic, which is there, please identify yourself and ask one question in 30 seconds or less. Given the number of potential questions on the topics Lynn is talking about, please be aware that I will firmly nudge you along if I get the sense that you're more interested in monologue than dialogue. For this reason, I strongly encourage you to end your first or second sentence in a question mark and stop there. Let's start with Kathy.
I'm Kathy Moyd, member of the City Club, and I live in an apartment overlooking the new construction site for the Ritz-Carlton. I was very disappointed to see that the first thing they did was take away all the trees from around the area, and I found out afterwards that they have no requirement to replace them or to fund somebody else to replace them. So I'm wondering, is there anything Metro can do to force them to do it? I know the City Council of Portland apparently doesn't want to do anything. They want to cater to the developers.
Well, thank you for the question. I think the question is a bigger one in general of how do we actually put trees back into our urban environment as we grow. Obviously, we have been part and parcel with a lot of the partners in this room through our parks and open space bond measures and our levies and all the work that we do in restoring habitat, which brings a lot of the native trees back to an area and a lot of the native animals back with a lot of salmon are coming back into the stream corridors that we've planted trees and made for habitat in those stream corridors. So I'm very proud of that, to see salmon coming back into the urban area, which we didn't know if that would happen, and it's a good thing. Part of the questions that we had for our Parks and Nature Space bond measure was whether we could set a goal for planting trees. And I know that John Blatcher, our Parks Director, is standing up in the back, is very engaged in trying to figure out how we can set a goal for planting trees in the region.
So I'd follow up on that a little bit. For the city of Portland, sort of naturally as the environment, it's one among so many dozens of competing priorities, right? They're balancing development and questions like that. Parks and natural environment is much more central to Metro's vision. And so as the city of Portland grapples with budget deficits in their parks and sort of increasing challenges in that area, do you see an opportunity or feel an obligation for Metro to lean in even more heavily in the development of parks and natural spaces?
One of the lenses that we had in the development of our parks and open space bond measure was an equity lens, and much of that was looking at where do we need parks within the region as we grow, but also in the existing communities, as well as access. And really the access issue has become the bigger issue. We don't have welcoming parks throughout our entire region, and so how do we make them more welcoming? And I know all of the cities throughout the region are working on the same issue. How are people reflected back so they feel welcome? And there's a lot of discussion around listening to what makes an environment safe.
So your point about regional access, is that a polite way of saying downtown Portland is maybe less of a priority than other parts of the region that don't have as much access to natural areas?
Well, actually, if you would look at a map, downtown Portland has access to one of the largest parks in the entire United States inside an urban area.
Exactly.
So I would say that there are many other parts of the region who are needing more and larger park systems close by.
Gotcha. So I recall that you answered this question last year in a way that saddened people, but I'll ask it again just in case anything has changed. So when can we expect some action on the much-loved Zoo Railway?
It is much loved. I love it myself. We are certainly continuing conversations with the City of Portland and the park. Councilor Dirksen is waving his hand and has been working diligently on this issue. A lot of folks know this, and maybe some of you don't, but while it is a much-loved train, it was also built on a landslide. So it's a slow-moving landslide, which has engineering issues related to that. And so we have our engineer working on it, Councilor Dirksen, and he's working with the community to help find a way through. So thank you.
That is much more optimistic than last year, which I think was like, it's the city, ain't nothing gonna happen. So, put much more politely, of course. So you talked a lot about the housing bond and sort of the historic nature of that, with both the recent bond and sort of this upcoming potential tax on the horizon for permanent supportive services. I think for a lot of folks, Metro seems to be wading into really new areas. And so can you talk a little bit about how you see this housing work aligning with Metro's longstanding mission?
You know, our mission is to actually work on things that are of significant regional importance. And so when people stand up and say something's important, we hear that and we want to move. The work that was done to get to the regional affordable housing bond measure was long and arduous way before we made the decision to go and do the bond measure. We had to have a large conversation with all of our stakeholders about how we talk about housing in this region. But it wasn't outside of our area of expertise, because we have been working for 25 years on transit-oriented development and low-income housing along light rail lines and high ridership transit corridors. So it wasn't completely outside of our area of expertise. The homelessness issue is not just about the housing, it's about the wraparound services and braiding of those services and the flexibility of the money coming to the counties to all of the providers. So this is a new arena for us, but I think the council really wants to make sure that we are successful in the whole for the people that get the housing and who are homeless. And so we're willing to take that next step into territory, right, that is new to us, but what we are looking at is really digging in and looking at the governance, because we want to make sure that there's regional oversight, but that we allow for the flexibility to happen on the ground so people are getting what they need.
If sort of the conceptualization of your mission is sort of matters of regional importance. That's pretty broad. Is there a limit to the kind of work that Metro could get involved in, right? Because almost everything could be deemed of regional importance.
Yes, but this is a very diverse region.
Yes.
And not everybody agrees that Metro should be part and parcel of everything that they're doing and get in their business.
That is true. Are you, please?
My name is Debbie Kay. I'm a City Club member and president of the League of Women Voters of Portland. President Peterson, thank you for being here today. You mentioned a company that's doing plastics recycling. What hope can we have as citizens of this region, inhabitants of this region, for enhanced opportunities for plastics recycling as just consumers?
We're working really hard, and most of that is on public-private partnerships. And so we have doubled the amount of grants going out for innovation grants to be able to take in more waste and make it recyclable, so that we can do more with what we're getting in and send less to the landfill. So we're working really hard, but the decision was, the decision by China not to accept a lot of our dirty waste was harsh, and so we have to run to catch up. And we're doing a great job, and I just want to point out the folks in the back who work on this. Y'all stand up from waste management work. They were reluctant to get up.
What, sort of circling back to housing, in your mind, what's the number one thing that folks can do as individuals to work toward a solution around homelessness?
Well, obviously, the first thing is support this ballot measure that we're putting on for May. It will do a whole lot to move this region forward. You know, I think the number one thing, we have to learn how to grow as a region, and we really haven't had enough homes to be able to support the number of people moving into the region, which has pushed a lot of folks out to the edge for affordable and low-income housing, and even beyond. So when you look at Cascade Locks, Canby, Estacada, North Plains, they are experiencing a huge amount of growth. And it's because that's where affordable housing, the missing middle, is. We also, as a region, need to be for missing middle housing, which means that we need to be for ADUs and duplexes and triplexes, and we need to be for having development standards of how that happens, but we need to be bringing people into our communities, not excluding them from our communities. And I think that's really where all of us can take a stand and say we're a welcoming neighborhood, no matter what neighborhood we are.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little more about transportation. So you, I believe, made an offer to Washington County mayors and commissioners to sort of bike along the region's infrastructure. And so one person is wondering if any mayors or commissioners have taken you up on your offer to bike around for a ride along on the region's infrastructure.
That was 2 years ago now.
People really keep track of these things.
I know. I know. 24 by bike. Let's do it again. Yes, and I'm trying to remember the mayor of Cornelius. Mayor of Cornelius, Jeff Delaney. Mayor Callaway, did we do a bike ride? We did a bike ride before we met with you. Yeah, and Mayor Doyle is here, and we did a bike ride before we met with the mayor. We did really good tours. They had too much to show us to do it on bike, but we did bike tours, which was really great, and you gave input of where we should go and how we should do it. But the mayors of this region really are pro-bike. They turned out en masse.
That's fantastic. So one of the questions, and we'll start here, but I think it may evolve, is whether or not you have a vision or a strategy at Metro to improve safety on public transportation.
Well, I think one of the things that we're doing through this ballot measure is focusing on the corridors in this region. So I had mentioned 82nd, TV Highway, McLaughlin, but there's 122nd, 162nd, 171st, 185th out in Washington County, Southwest Corridor, McLaughlin, there's a lot, Sunrise, 171st to 182nd. When you're focusing on the corridors, you're focusing on access to those corridors by every mode, including by walking and biking. You're also focusing on how to cross the street and the transit. So this proposed ballot measure has 4,000 new street lights in it. Why? Because that's when you need to see the pedestrian, the bike, the other car, the bus. You need to be able to see all of that. So that was one of the things we put in, along with 250 new signals. Now, I'm probably the only one in this room that's getting excited about the number of signals that will be actually expanded and progressing through the region. But it's really important for safety, and it's really important for traffic flow and congestion and greenhouse gas emission. And all of those signals will be getting basically transit priority treatment. So we will be able to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions.
Great. I'm going to more on that, but let's take a question from the microphone.
Kurt Wavering, member. I was very heartened that you talked about homelessness. And what about the Wapato facility? How about using that?
Places like Wapato, I'm so glad to see that there's a nonprofit that's looking to open that up, and that there is basically a public-private now kind of interest in finding new ways to have places for people to go, but they really do need a permanent place to go to after that. So it's really, we need all of it, and I know throughout the region we need more shelters, not just in Portland, but throughout the entire region. So it's part and parcel of the system.
I think it's notable that nearly every elected official that we've had on stage recently has been asked about Wapato, regardless of how much influence or authority they have over that as a homeless shelter.
Could you tell?
I could see her face. So I think sort of back to greenhouse gas emissions. So when you were here last year, the transportation measure was in just the earliest stages of public opinion and research and thinking. And I remember after you were here, one of the things that folks talked about the most was whether you had hinted at what percentage of the measure would go towards transit and bicycling versus cars. And so one of the questions that we got ahead of this program was sort of looking at this measure, do you feel like it is sufficiently addressing sort of the climate crisis that we have? Do you think it's a compromise? Like, where do you see it on that spectrum of addressing greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah, this is a issue that you have to really seat yourself in the reality of today, and that is all of these corridors were state highway corridors. All of our arterials in this region that we depend on to move around were state highway corridors, and they developed as state highways, not as multimodal corridors. And so they have been maintained for speed for vehicles and throughput for vehicles. So what we're doing in this measure is making a down payment to make them multimodal corridors. And the reason for that is that we have buses that are stuck in traffic throughout the entire region. So if we were to put transit service out, which is one of the things that people have proposed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we'd be putting out more diesel buses, and they would be stuck idling in traffic congestion. So what this does is it sets the stage for making transit and bike and ped a priority throughout the region, and then allows for TriMet transit service to come in on top of that, which is through HB 2017, which was passed 3 years ago. It seems like a long time ago.
Goes fast.
And TriMet is working on implementing those transit service improvements. So what it'll do, it'll actually make a down payment as we move towards greater greenhouse gas reduction in the transportation sector. So it does reduce it, but we have to look to the future to actually get the transit service into the corridors.
So do you feel like there will be a subsequent measure to fund that? Or what is the longer term vision?
I think there's a whole bunch of things going on which are really exciting. Assuming cap and trade can make it through the legislature this session, there is a large portion of money that would come to this region to be able to go into the technology and transportation demand management strategies that will actually get bigger results, because they will then be on top of what we're already doing today.
You spoke of the I-5 Rose Quarter expansion. on the top of everyone's minds here in Portland when we think about transportation. In particular, you spoke to CAPS and sort of the Albina vision that those are connected to. I think one of the core questions has been whether those CAPS would be buildable, sort of functional CAPS, or whether they would be a place to sit and look. Rukiah Adams, one of the Albina Vision's most visible leaders, has been pretty critical of the way ODOT has managed this and has described the non-buildable CAPS as expensive, wimpy, and ill-conceived. Do you think that CAPS that are sort of just visual parks are acceptable, or do you think ODOT needs to plan, budget, and build functional CAPS?
The short answer is ODOT needs to build functional CAPS that actually allow us to continue building buildings across that entire expanse so that we actually energize that with people living there and being able to be in that space. I want you to visualize in your mind the place. Thank you. You closed your eyes. Everybody close your eyes.
I'm ready.
And think about walking through the south part of the Moda Center where the light rail comes through and the Broadway Bridge accesses. It's crisscrossed with transportation. Mm-hmm. And there's these green spaces. Are those beautiful green spaces? Do you feel welcome in that environment? No, but that would be recreated on the north side by these lids the way they stand today. Mm-hmm. We don't want that to happen because that still creates a separation because you don't feel safe. You don't feel like you're supposed to be in that space as a person. Mm-hmm. So let's just not do that. Let's actually think about what kind of place we want to make for that part of the region.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I think sort of on a related note with ODOT, I think there's been a lot of questions about ODOT's management of the project to date that has not even begun really, including sort of around budget escalations and how they've communicated about it. Do you, like as a regional leader that's really invested in transportation, do you feel like you trust ODOT to lead this project and to deliver it on time and on budget?
So if on time and on budget are our only two measures of success, we will probably fail. Because the majority of the variables that we care about, the things that we care about in this region, are on time and on budget, the efficient use of our taxpayer dollars, but they're also about creating equity, about creating safety, and about creating community. And so we have asked for two very simple things in order to ensure that this moves forward. One, that there is a decision-making process that we all trust and we're all involved and at the table at. Mm-hmm. And that means everybody. And that means doing and having some conversations that are going to make people feel very uncomfortable. And yes, I feel with the leadership that we have at ODOT right now, we will kick this off to a good start. The second is that we actually talk about what outcomes the region wants, mm-hmm. as well as the state who just wants to drive through. Right. Because the state just driving through gets only a portion of what we need, right? We need way more than that. So as long as we make sure that our performance outcomes and our performance metrics are about accessibility, safety, mobility for our community, then I think we can move forward.
That's great. How do you see local businesses joining in and contributing to this vision that you've painted for equitable progress in our region?
Well, small businesses are really the heart of this entire region. If I'm remembering my statistics correctly from when I worked at TriMet, it's about 80% of all the business in this region, number of businesses is small business. What we have worked really hard at Metro to achieve is community and making sure that you have services near you that are close by so that you don't have to get in your car and drive to get your dry cleaning or go to the coffee shop or go grocery shopping. So we have tried with our partners at the city level to make sure that we have main streets that work for all modes and all people and that have small business opportunities up and down those main streets. And so between Metro and the state and the Main Streets programs that have gone on, I think we've done a really good job of really centering activity around small businesses, and I think that their work with us and figuring out what do they need, what's the square footage they need, what are the rents that they need, is really important. And as we go into the future, it's going to be important to make sure that when we do large projects like Southwest Corridor with the Max Line, that we don't displace those businesses, that we're working hand in hand with them to make sure that they're around for a very long time.
Absolutely. So I know for a lot of us, 2019 felt like more than 1 year, but it in fact was just 12 months. And so you're just a little bit into your first term as president. You have at least 3 years to go. I know, right? And they're going to be, those years are not getting any shorter, I'm told. And so when you kind of look ahead, you talked some about vision, but just sort of to close us out, I'm wondering, what do you see over for the region for the next 3 years and for the next 10 years? Like thinking about a long horizon, which I know is sometimes hard with so much that's dynamic.
No, I'm going to blow your mind, and we're going to talk about 50-year visions.
Love it.
I think the most exciting part of coming back to Metro, because I worked at Metro 20 years ago, is that I worked on the Region 2040 growth plan. And it was the first time we did scenario planning at a regional level in the entire country. And we were able to say, how do we want to grow? Where do we want to grow? When we look beyond this year with the 2 ballot initiatives, one for homelessness and one for transportation, we're going to do a lot of implementation. We're going to spend a lot of time working with all of you in this audience to make sure that we can get services down on the ground as fast as we possibly can. But beyond that, we're going to be working on re-envisioning our region with 2070. Metro 2070. Think about where you'll be, or won't, in 2070. It's kind of amazing to start thinking about that, because if you'll recall, when we did the Metro 2040 growth concept, we weren't talking about racial equity. We weren't talking about autonomous vehicles. We also did not include parks into a more comprehensive land use plan. And we weren't certainly talking about housing in the way that we're talking about it now. And we also have a shortage of industrial land. So we have a lot of things to start thinking about of how do we play out different scenarios for the future, and I'm really excited about that.
That is exciting. I'm looking around. I think I may be in the youngest quintile in the room, and 2070 is still beyond my life expectancy. And so I'm just thinking, like, that's exciting. That's bold and big that Metro is thinking about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our time is up for today. We encourage you to continue this conversation in your community and online. Follow City Club at PDX City Club on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we are so grateful for everyone who made today's forum possible. Thank you so much for joining us.